Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Roommate's crazy girlfriend tries to control my diet. After that, am I the jerk for leaving when my fiance introduced me as a bookkeeper? And after that, I actually do work here, but probably not how you think. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to control anyone's diet. How else are you supposed to lay off the Twinkies, Reddit boy? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Roommate's crazy girlfriend tries to control my diet. I feel like this is entirely ridiculous. I live with my roommate, Matt. We used to be pretty close friends, but over the last 2 years of living with him, we've drifted apart, and I'm just waiting for our lease to end to move out on my own. Matt's girlfriend, Sarah, pretty much lives with us now, despite not paying rent. I won't lie, she annoys me to no end. She's an entitled airhead who thinks the world revolves around her. Anyway, Sarah has a condition where she gets nauseous at the slightest smell and sight of certain foods. She's an incredibly picky eater, and anything outside of corn dogs and chicken tenders makes her nauseous, according to her. Well, unfortunately for her, I like to cook. I love heavily spiced foods and love to cook Asian-style dishes. So living with a toddler who can't stand the smell really sucks. Sarah has always complained about me cooking smelly foods and has asked me to stop or do it when she's not home. Well, considering she doesn't pay rent and spends 18 hours a day at my home, I have not accommodated her at all. Last night, Sarah and Matt sat me down and told me I need to stop cooking because Sarah cannot stand it anymore. Apparently, she had a mental breakdown last week when I was cooking curry. She claims I'm making our apartment a hostile environment by ignoring her concerns. I told both of them to buzz off until Sarah starts paying her share of the rent. Matt said that because he lives here, his opinion matters as well, and he wants me to stop. I told him no to that as well because he's only doing this because Sarah is being a baby. We ended up having a massive argument, and neither of them is talking to me. Both of them are staying at Sarah's mom's house right now. I say good riddance. At least I did, until I told the story to my coworkers, and they're all shocked. They say I'm being a complete jerk. This has given me second thoughts on if I was the jerk in the fight that we had. Not the jerk. You told both of them to buzz off until Sarah starts paying her share of the rent? This is exactly what you should have said. They can find things to do outside of the house, as she does not even live there. Have you talked to your landlord about the extra tenant? Did you get a choice when she moved in? Or was it like, I guess she's just staying here from now on, without a word? Either way, I would tell them I'm going to continue to cook my own food, and if you have a problem with that, I'll bring it up to the landlord that you, roommate, brought your girlfriend in to live with us, and she doesn't pay rent. And seriously, if the cooking bothers her, she can leave to go to another room and light a candle or burn some incense. I'm a picky eater, and I love the smell of different types of cooking styles. For example, I love the smell of mushrooms, garlic, and onion being sauteed, but could never eat it because, ew, mushrooms. It sounds like he moved her in and they're trying to force you out before your agreement is done so they can have the place to themselves. Not the jerk. Edit. I had another thought. Her condition. Is she one of those rare people who have a higher sensitivity to scent and needs a basically sterilized room, otherwise she's sick all the time? Or is she pregnant and they aren't telling you? Because I was turned off by scents and seen certain foods when I was pregnant. Who do you think is the jerk? OP or their roommate and his girlfriend? Please let us know. The guys who date the Karens and make excuses for them are just as bad as the Karens themselves. Am I the jerk for leaving when my fiance introduced me as a bookkeeper? I, female 45, have a fiance, male 55, who is a retired military officer. I own a successful company I started 7 years ago and have a small staff of 25. I worked my way through college, paying as I went. Therefore, I graduated in my early 30s with a double major in accounting and business management. I'm very proud of that. For a little background, I worked hard for my degrees and I have zero debt. I know it took me longer than the typical student going full-time to college after high school. I worked full-time to pay as I took classes. I went to junior college first, then finished at a 4-year. I took 2 classes per semester for a long time, but I finally made it. I've been teased that junior college isn't the same as going 4 years to a major university. Well, I'm proud to have done both and feel the education I received at junior college was excellent. I worked as an accountant for some large corporations as well as programming and IT. I started my company doing similar support to large and small companies alike. I have a wonderful staff. I manage the contracts, kick-off meetings, sales and consulting staff. I also do some of the consulting and most of the sales and contracts. My sister is my office manager, and I'm blessed in so many ways to have her. I was dating my now fiancé before I started my company, and we recently got engaged. Everything seemed to be perfect, except he keeps introducing me as a bookkeeper. No disrespect intended to them or the profession. My issue is that I've worked hard to get to where I am. I'm an accountant, graduate with a double major, and a successful business owner. He could pick almost any other title to introduce me as, but he chooses bookkeeper. I've asked him many times in private to stop calling me a bookkeeper, as it implies to my clients and business associates that he doesn't respect me or what I have accomplished. He said he doesn't see the big deal or the difference and continues to do so. I recently pulled him aside and asked him to just introduce me as a consultant at the event we were going to. While there, we were talking to a prospective client for my company, and he says, "She's come a long way for a bookkeeper." I know my face had a fall blush at that, excused myself, and walked away. We had both driven there, so I got in my car and went home. We both have our own townhomes. I sent him a text to let him know that I was leaving and I would talk to him later. He thinks I'm overreacting. My family thinks he's a controlling jerk that doesn't respect me, but not sure what to think now. He seems so supportive when we are together, but not when we are around other people. He tends to treat me like a subordinate, nice kid, playing with the adults. He does talk down to me in front of my family, but I always assumed he was joking badly. So, am I the jerk for leaving and overreacting? Not the jerk. This man is military. He understands what titles are and why they matter, and he's doing this on purpose. ETA, your family thinks he's a controlling jerk that doesn't respect you? If you love and respect the opinions of your family in other circumstances, and you trust them to have your best interests at heart, then you should always listen when they say things like this to you. In the end, you get to make your own choices, but when you have a loving family, the chances of them saying this without meaning it are really slim. The people who love us can see what we can't, and they want what's best for us. She's come a long way for a bookkeeper? That is what's called a backhanded compliment. It sounds nice enough if you don't think about it, but its whole purpose is to knock you down a peg and make sure you don't believe in yourself more than you believe in him. You're definitely not the jerk. You've attempted healthy communication multiple times, and he continues to refer to you in a way that's belittling and disrespectful of all that you've accomplished. He can no longer play the clueless card. You've made it very clear how this is affecting you. I think your family is right. I actually do work here, but probably not how you think. Context: I work in a hospital. I also have a baby face and I'm short. On any given day, I can be mistaken for a high school student playing dress up, so I don't really begrudge people for mistaking me for a volunteer, unless you're mean. It's a weekend and I'm scheduled to work 28 hours. In my hospital, our staff are pretty distinctive. Nurses wear white, surgical staff wear blue, and techs and other staff wear black. I'm wearing the baggy surgical scrubs to be as comfortable as possible. I'm rushing around trying to see my patients and stop by to say hi to a few nurses I recognize. We chat a little and one asks me where I'm going. I mention the patient room and they give each other looks, bad sign number 1, before looking at me and assuring they'd check in, bad sign number 2. I thank them, then I dip into the patient room. Me: "Hi." Patient, visibly irritated: "About time you came in here. I'm done with my food." Me: "Okay, do you want me to clear that tray for you?" Patient looks at me like a jerk. "Well, I'm done with it, aren't I?" Alrighty then, grumpy guy, whatever, it happens. I go to move the tray and I notice his wife sitting in a chair by his bed. She's looking apologetic to me and moves to take the tray, but I wave her off and settle into the side. Me: "Hi, I'm patient. I need to go to the bathroom." Me: "Okay, I can come back if you'd like." Patient, again looking at me like I'm a jerk: "I need to go to the bathroom." Me: "Sir, you're welcome to use the restroom. I can come back when you're done." Patient: "This place is ridiculous. You aren't even going to help me. I'm out of major surgery, and you can't help me up to go to the bathroom." Me, pulling out my patient list more for show than anything else because I have it memorized. This jerk had finger surgery in his non-dominant hand. He has one completely unwrapped hand and his legs work fine. According to my records, sir, you passed your physical therapy yesterday and have unlimited ability to get in and out of bed and move on your own. However, I also can provide a urinal for you if you'd like. Patient starts yelling, "This is ridiculous. I just had major surgery. I'm in pain. You want me to just lie down in pain? You should be helping me." At this point, I see a few nurses duck their head in to check on me, but I wave them off. This dude needs an ego check. Me. "Sir, if you want assistance with your meals, we will provide it, but we will not tolerate being talked to like this." Patient. "I'm not listening to some nurse tell me what to do. You do what your job is." Patient's wife. "She's not a nurse." Patient. "I don't care what she is. I'm not listening to any of this. I don't ever want to see you again." Me. "Just to confirm, sir, you said that you don't want to see me?" Patient. "Did I stutter? I said go away. I want a new nurse." At this point, his nurse steps into the room with hospital security, the kind who are built like NFL linebackers, respond to psych issues, and have handcuffs. Nurse. "Doctor, I called security out of concern for staff safety." Security officer. "Are you okay, and do you require assistance?" Me. "No, but I would like you two to witness for me that the patient would no longer require our services, and pain management will sign off now per patient insistence. I'll alert his surgery team." Nurse and security officer nods. Nurse makes a note in her papers. Patient is now visibly buffering as he's processing. Patient, loading, probably like at 50%. "Wait, doctor? With pain management?" Me. "Yes, I'm the pain management doctor. Your team wanted me to see you to assess your post-operative pain, but I understand that we are not needed. I'll let your team know." Patient, anger downloaded. "You could have told me that. You're leaving? I want a new pain doctor." Me, smiling serenely. "Sir, it's the weekend. I'm the only pain management doctor. And as the two other witnesses have noted, you have fired me from your area. Good day." I go off on my merry way as this guy starts going ballistic. It's not standard for the pain service to be asked to see a hand surgery, but I did it as a favor to the orthopedic surgeon since the patient is, quoting the surgeon, a little jerk about his pain. I asked the nurse to let me know what happens when the patient realized I'm the only one in the whole hospital who can write for high doses that he keeps demanding. Update. Boss told me to deep clean the back and to not come to the front for any reason, so I did. Friday rolled around after I came back from the small vacation I had. The location had no service. I greeted some of the servers that I'm cool with, and they all gave me an "oh crap" look, since apparently my boss had been trying to call me to come in to open and close on Wednesday and Thursday. Obviously, I didn't know this since I had no service where I had been at the time. I make my way to the boss, expecting to get a freak out from him, which surprisingly he didn't have. He welcomed me back and asked a couple common questions about my trip. After 5 minutes of talking, he springs on me. "Since you didn't come in on Wednesday and Thursday, you need to come in Monday and Tuesday of next week." To which I replied, "Did you schedule me for those days?" And he immediately replies with, "No, but I know you have nothing better to do since you're just a teen." At this point, my face just looked like I had seen a bear riding a bicycle while juggling bowling pins. I was absolutely amazed at how those words came out of his mouth with such ease, like he really believed he had any sort of power over me. I paused for a moment and said, "No, I don't think I'll be doing that since I'm not currently scheduled on those days. I will not show up on those days." He then tried to argue that he had to come in on his days off to cover my shifts. I learned from the servers that he never showed up. The last thing I said to him before I started working was, "This isn't my problem. Hire more people," and I walked off. Saturday, the 11th. Today was looking like it was going to be pretty mundane. Busy floor, a lot of food needing to be run, tables that need to be put back together. Pretty usual tasks for the job until my boss showed up and started barking orders even though the restaurant was very packed and we needed all hands on deck. But obviously, that's not what he wanted. He could care less if the restaurant went to the toilet. All he cared about was being in control. The boss tells me and a server to go clean the storage closet, and if we don't, we can just be cut. We both reluctantly go and do it since he had 4 tables to attend to, and I wanted to help him so he wouldn't get bad tips just because a man-child wants to give tasks that can be done later and lay it out on the table for us to see. Super Bowl Sunday, the 12th, was supposed to be a really slow day since we don't have any TVs on the walls and we don't serve bar food. But as soon as church got out, we were super slammed to the point you couldn't even see the front door. And it stayed like that until 3 p.m. and I was just ready to leave. So I clocked out on time as you would at any other job. And my boss saw that and said, "Are you not being a team player right now? You're just going to abandon the ship like that?" To which I reply, "Well, yeah, you only have me for the time scheduled, not for when it's convenient for you. I have no problem working over the time I'm scheduled for, but I just can't with the snarky remarks and annoying temper tantrums that he has on the daily. I'm just very done with him, so why would I go above and beyond for him? Plus, it was the Super Bowl, and of course, I had plans. I wanted to hang out with my friends and not work." Thursday, the 16th. I received an email from the new place I'm going to be working at, and I got the job. The new job will be paying me $16 an hour, double what I've been making. I also start Monday. I had gone to work the same day and told my boss, I will not be able to put my 2 weeks in. However, I will work through this Sunday, and that will be my last day working for you. I hope that's enough time for you, so you can find my replacement, and if this doesn't work for you, I can always make my last day be today, since Texas doesn't require employees and employers to submit a 2-week resignation. He starts to freak out since Monday through Thursday of next week, the restaurant has a bunch of large reservations. He replies with, "If you stay with us, I can give you a big raise for all of your hard work." My eyebrows raise since there's no way that this raise will match my new employer's rate. Intrigued, I ask, "How much were you thinking of giving me?" Drum roll, clears throat. "I can give you a 25-cent raise, which will make your paychecks a little bit heavier." I'm dumbfounded. My brain packed up and jumped out of my head. This was the best deal I could have gotten ever. Forget the new job. Who can say no to an extra $20 on their paycheck? Kidding. I politely declined and told them I had already made up my mind, and for the rest of my shift, he was in the office scrambling around, posting job listings and looking for applications. It's really crazy how someone goes from being a complete dictator to a servant when they lose their power. These last 2 days, he's been nothing but cupcakes and sunshine because he knows I can leave whenever I'd like. Am I the jerk for leaving when I refuse to eat my boyfriend's mom's food? For context, I'm dairy intolerant. It makes me incredibly sick. So I, female 24, have been dating this guy, James, male 27, for 6 months now. We live in California. He moved here for a job. I've just always lived here, whereas his parents live in Missouri, so I've never really had a chance to properly meet them. About a week ago, James told me he was going up to Missouri for a few days to visit his parents and asked me if I wanted to come along and meet them, which of course I said yes to, as I naturally wanted to meet his parents in person. We arrived here yesterday, and I had made it clear to James to inform his parents that I am dairy intolerant, and he assured me that he had told them and that they knew, so I assumed there was no issue there at all. So on to the issue here. His mom was in the kitchen pretty much all day yesterday preparing a meal, and I have to say, it smelled amazing. I asked her what the dish was, and she told me it was a chicken korma curry. I assumed that she had substituted the dairy ingredients, like the yogurt and cream, with something else, so I thought nothing of it. Come time to eat, she presented me with the dish, and it looked and smelled amazing. I asked her for confirmation if it was dairy-free, and she looked at me as if I was some sort of an alien and asked why on earth a chicken korma would be dairy-free. I told her I was lactose intolerant, and she started getting extremely angry, saying that I should have told her earlier and she didn't have anything else she could make for me. James chimed in, saying he did tell her about my dairy intolerance, but then turned on me, saying that it wasn't that bad of an intolerance and I should just eat it. I honestly just felt really backed into a corner, so I started crying, saying I'm sorry, but I can't eat this. And then I left and booked myself into a nearby motel. James keeps calling me, saying how upset his mom and dad are, and saying how I disrespected his mom by not at least trying her meal. I just feel really upset, and maybe I should have just eaten a few bites and sucked it up. The intolerance isn't so severe that I'd end up in the hospital, but then again, I'd rather not have horrible stomach issues. Also, I feel like I shouldn't have just stormed out like that. Am I the jerk? Update. Thank you for all of your responses. You've all been really nice and I appreciate it. A few of you have mentioned that it was a bit overdramatic of me to storm out instead of trying to smooth things over, which I completely agree with. It's just for me personally, I don't do well with confrontation, and my fight or flight response tends to kick in when I'm presented with situations like this. So yeah, I do regret the way I responded, but unfortunately I can't take it back now. So I did finally respond to my boyfriend's calls. He was extremely apologetic and came by my room to see if I was okay. However, as soon as he got here, he started ranting at me again about his mother and her hurt feelings. I told him to leave, and I plan on getting a flight back from Missouri to California tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's a $100 flight and takes a chunk out of my budget. However, I'm feeling really uncomfy in this situation, and I want to be alone. Update 2. I just want to edit this and clarify something. There's been a few of you telling me it was my responsibility to tell his mom, not his. The reason why I couldn't tell her myself beforehand was because I had never met her before. Therefore, I had no way of contacting her except through James. When we arrived, she was already in the kitchen cooking the meal, so I couldn't have told her before she started cooking either. There really was no way I could have done anything. I just took James' word that he had told her. You just learned that 1. Your boyfriend lied to you about telling her, and 2. He would rather you be in horrific pain and discomfort than admit the truth. This boy does not care about you. This is your first red flag, and you need to pay attention to it. Leave him, not the jerk. Do not leave your classroom without asking permission. This happened yesterday. I teach at a public school. Occasionally in the hallway I teach in, there's an overwhelming sewage smell. Normally it's an inconvenience, but not so drastic we have to move rooms. Yesterday, it was the worst I've ever experienced since I started teaching at this school. Teachers immediately tried to move their classrooms, get out of the hallway, etc. One class moved into the principal's conference room, and from the gist of it, our principal was livid that her space was invaded. We received an email stating that we are not to move our classes without notifying our supervisor. Now that seems logical. However, the email went on to say that we are not allowed to leave our room to stroll, visit other classrooms, etc. without speaking to our supervisor or the front office. I was absolutely fired up when I read this email. I wanted to make her regret sending it as quickly as possible. I notified everyone in my hallway that they should be calling the office every time they needed to use the bathroom. I encouraged as many teachers as possible to constantly be calling to notify of their movement around campus. Within 2 hours, I had called the front office 4 times, once even just to let them know I was walking down to the front office. Most of the teachers in my building called a couple times. Once, when the main receptionist was on lunch and another support staff was covering for her, I called to let them know I was going to the bathroom, and the woman on the other end sounded so confused. "Do you need something?" she awkwardly asked. I explained that, per the email, it was expected of us to notify the office of our bathroom breaks. She chuckled and told me to have a good time. Within 3 hours, we received another staff-wide email explaining, "Okay, some clarification, and that we should not call the office if we need to go to the bathroom, have a stroll on campus, or visit another teacher's classroom." I walked down to the office later that day with the biggest grin on my face, and every support staff knew exactly why I was so happy. We all had a good laugh. One of the support staff said to me that the principal said, "I didn't mean it literally." If you're going to put something in writing to a group of professional educators and be aggressive and rude about it, you better know exactly what you're saying. The vehicle won't flip? Whatever you say, boss. So this story's from my IT teacher. We'll call him Joe. Before he was an IT teacher, he served a few years in the Marines. I don't know how many in total. He tells us a lot of stories about his time in the Marines. Some of them are really fun, and others are pretty somber. He's told us about his PTSD. It's entertaining nonetheless. Anyways, one of the stories he told us today I knew was perfect material for this sub. I did ask him for permission to post it. So when he was in the Marines, he was a sergeant. However, at the time of this, a new person joined the Marines and was about 17 to 18, much younger than him. Joe was probably in his mid-20s at this time. The new guy, we'll call him Noob, was a higher rank than Joe, but still younger and a bit cocky. So Joe and the rest of his platoon were going over Mount Fuji on an amphibious vehicle, basically a big military van. So considering it's a massive mountain, they came to a part of the mountain that had a really steep tilt to it. Now keep in mind, there's 2 types of radio communication, intercom and radio. Intercom means where it's being said will be told to everyone who has a radio, but radio will only go between 2 people. So Joe was driving the vehicle and they got to the steep part. Noob decided that he thought the vehicle could survive it and make it over fine. Joe knew that it most definitely wouldn't. He was in the Marines for much longer than Noob. Noob, over the intercom, argued with Joe. He was telling him to go forward and that the vehicle would make it. but Joe argued back with him saying it wouldn't. Eventually, Noob said, "I'm ordering you to drive this vehicle forward now." Now, given that this was a direct order, Joe obviously had no choice but to comply. So, over the intercom, Joe told the rest of his platoon to buckle up and hold on tight. He closed the latch above the seat and buckled up too. Noob was confused by this, but didn't buckle up or close the latch above him. Joe started to pull forward, and once they got onto the steep part, they were going decently good. Noob seemed pretty confident. However, almost immediately, the vehicle started to tip slowly, one of those where you can feel it for a little before it tips. So Joe held on tight, and then they fell. They tumbled around and around like 5 times. During their falling, Noob flew out of the hatch, or jumped out, he wasn't sure, but wasn't really hurt. He only got a concussion from the door to the hatch hitting his head as he went out. Joe was fine due to being buckled up, but some of the other passengers weren't buckled up, so they flew around. Most of them broke a bone or two and/or got a concussion. Once they stopped, Joe got up and left the vehicle. Their gunnery sergeant, we'll call him Red, immediately ran over. Now Red was your textbook tough guy Marine sergeant. He was almost 7 feet tall, extremely built, broad-shouldered, everything you'd expect. Joe immediately started explaining that it was an order and that he had to listen. Red said he heard everything due to the argument being on the comms. Noob ran over a minute or so later and started yelling, "What did you teach them? They don't even know how to drive." Basically, sicking the blame on Joe. Red, having heard everything, stomped over to Noob and grabbed him by the front of his shirt, yanking him forward and yelling at him. He then pushed Noob forward and socked him right in the face, knocking him out and dropping him. Joe did say to the class that if Noob hadn't said everything on comms, he could have gotten in trouble, but most likely he would have straight up said no to going forward. But it was just too perfect. He's a great teacher and everyone loves him. Am I the jerk for objecting to a group of people coming in and playing a loud game at my table in a coffee shop? My team at work is remote, so I work from home. I typically spend part of my workday at a local coffee shop where most customers are working on their computers. It's a popular spot, so sometimes it's hard to find a table. Often, customers who don't even know each other will end up sharing the largest tables. When I arrived at the coffee shop today, the only open table was the largest table in the shop. It wasn't an enormous table. It seats 5 people total, but only 4 comfortably. I set up my computer and I got to work. I was finishing up a weeks-long project against a deadline later today. About half an hour later, 2 men approached the table and asked if anyone was sitting on the other side. I said no and moved my sweatshirt off the table to make room for them. I assumed they were there to work because they wore backpacks. They set their backpacks down and went to order their drinks. When they came back, one of them said to me, "Just so you know, 6 more people are coming and we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons here, so it will be pretty loud." I objected. I said that it was fine if they were here to work or have a conversation on the other side of my table, but trying to squeeze 7 people into the 4 remaining seats and playing a loud party game wasn't going to work for me. They told me I was entitled and that because this was a public space, I basically just had to deal with it. I thought this was rude. I told them that they were crowding me out of my own table because it would be impossible for me to work at the table if they were using it as a game table with a lot of other people. They had already asserted that it would get very loud. I decided to leave because I didn't have time to waste with a fast approaching deadline. As I was packing up, they mocked me for being upset, saying that they were confident I'd figure it out and that this too shall pass. Because there were no open seats in the coffee shop, I just went home. To me, it seems that if someone is at a table first, then anyone who joins that table should be basically respectful of that person. Yes, it is a public space, but am I really entitled for asking that they not disrupt my table with a loud game because I was already sitting there? What's the etiquette for sharing tables in a public space? Edit. To clarify, the coffee shop is right next to a university. Some people bring in 27-inch desktop monitors and camp out all day. I don't. 95 to 100% of the customers are studying or working. It's definitely the norm at this shop, more so than others I go to. Before my current laptop-based job, I worked as a barista for several years. I know to share space, and I also keep buying things to pay for the space I occupy. I buy something every hour, including at least 1 meal each time I'm there, and I usually stay 1 to 3 hours. Not the jerk. People that come along later with more people than there are seats for are rude. That is apart from many other noise considerations. However, people do like to push single folks around. Not sure about the noise factor. I think the only recourse you would have had would be to complain to staff. They're the only ones that have say-so over customers' behavior. And if this group regularly comes to play games there and the management doesn't mind, then you do have to put up with it. My coworker is mad that I wouldn't work without clocking in. So I'm 16 and I have a part-time job working carry-out for a chain restaurant. It's hourly plus tips. So Tuesday night I was scheduled 4 to 9. I don't drive, but my ride dropped me off like 15 minutes early. No big deal, I thought. There's a whole section of the restaurant that's only used on weekend nights, so during the week, employees sit at the tables if they're on break during a double. So since it's winter and I can't clock in more than 5 minutes before my shift, I figured I'd sit there and play on my phone or talk to coworkers. I wasn't there long, and one of the hosts that I thought I was cool with, Sarah, comes up to me and said, "Carry-out is really busy and Tim needs help." I said, "Okay, I'll go find a manager and ask to clock in." Sarah was like, "You can't just help him?" I said, "Yeah, as soon as I clock in." She rolled her eyes and walked away. I had to walk all over looking for a manager, including past the host stand. When I walked by the host stand, Sarah said, "You're seriously not going to help Tim for a few minutes?" Eventually, I found my boss and I clocked in. The other host said Sarah kept complaining about it all night. I mean, I see both sides. It was probably annoying that carryout was busy, because if the carryout phone isn't answered in so many rings, it goes to the host stand, so it probably made more work for the hosts. My reasons for not working were, 1, I want to be paid for my time, obviously, but 2, my parents always told me not to, because if I get hurt working off the clock, the company won't care. 3, if I did it once, Sarah would expect it all the time. I worked with Sarah yesterday and she still had an attitude. Sarah is a few years older than me and has worked there longer, and people like her, so I might have just made myself the disliked coworker over a couple of minutes. Was I wrong? Do not ever work off the clock. It's illegal and your parents are right. Sarah is not your manager, but if she was, she could get in serious legal trouble for trying to get you to work off the clock. Sarah is probably bitter because she sold her soul to a restaurant. Volunteering is for charities, not your actual job. Good job standing your ground. I wish I was like that when I was 16.
A huge shout out to our newest official channel member, Lewis. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means the world to Reddit Boy and I. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.